Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. As much as the words of greeting center around peace and the mention of God, in reality, peace seems to be a disappearing condition from our region. And I'm not talking about one state, but the region. God and peace are the two words most used in our everyday prayers, dialogue, and greetings. But peace is highly missing, both figuratively and actually. The Middle East was not always a bloody war zone, and the Gulf region was not always affluent. Most of the region was not always there as independent states, and terrorism was not a universal threat. Whatever it is, our experience, preferences, and ideologies are affected by history, geography, and economics of both the individual and the group. In fact, that almost determines the actions of governments and invaders, refugees, and appliers for asylum. Unfortunately, it's not always internal factors that determine what goes on in a central place on earth such as the Middle East. There also is the effect of external power struggle and the desire to subjugate the good of the local people to the benefits of the vested interests of internal or external groups, which determine the tug of control and some relationships which we call our experience as a conflict. I do not see it as conflict of civilizations as much as conflict of vested interest groups which benefit from creating war zones where arms and support programs are sold to all parties to continue the sales and dependence on the provider. The immediate future is like what Dr. Tilmiz Ahmed said. It's scary, if not bleak, as he said. If you factor in only the slumping price of oil in the region that depends on oil for its budget, operating, and projects. It's bleaker if you factor in the ripple effect. This covers all the countries which also are in engagement with the region, depending on support from it or use of their manpower. If that region slumps, it's not just by itself. For the purpose of this panel, we are asked to focus on the last 5 years of Middle East history. But honestly, can we understand any major catastrophe without understanding what led to it? You have heard several speeches today going back to 1948 and beyond, before, to detail some of the things that led to what we have today. Outwardly, it's also bleak. We all agree that current scene after the Arab Spring and its events and their repercussions is terrible. All one needs to do is watch the news on any local or international channel like CNN, BBC, RT, France 24, with each having its own emphasis on what to show and how to present it to the rest of the world. The common core is scores of destructed cities, homes and streets reduced to rubble, millions of refugees, and yelling fighters, all claiming God to be on their side as they fight the powers of evil, whatever evil means for them. The sad fact is what we see happening locally is the ongoing sum result of almost a century of seemingly unrelated internal and external events and developments. To clarify who are the major players in this mess, we must include all who are there, the coaches and the trainers and the sellers and the buyers, and answer the most basic question: who are the beneficiaries? The constant losers are the men in the street. The others are not constant. They're not constant actors, but changing, and affiliations and plans of the game are also changing with time. The Middle East was always important in the old times because of its central geographical position relative to the world continents, and more recently because it contains the major resource of oil and gas, which power the industry and assure transportation in the whole world. World stability, economic stability, is dependent on it. Most of the interest of the major powers to control the area is a reflection of this. And the method is to turn the market of what should be supply and demand of a commodity into playing rivalries between the different sides in the world, and the producers too. Post-World War, new ideologies were introduced into the Middle East, among which the most negative or negatively felt was and still is Zionism. A friend talked about this in the morning, so I will not go into the details. The long-term plan of the creation of Israel was geographical expansion, and we all know this because they refused to accept any set of borders after any war, let alone going back to 1948, which was allowed by the UN. Now, let me move fast into what came later. My idea is that it is all a question of either rivalries or empire building in this region, as it is not very different in the rest of the world. After the World War, Arab feelings of betrayal by the West led to revolts against Europeans, colonialism, demanding independence, and also the formation of ideological connections and cross-states movements to establish larger affiliations based on preferred identity. Again, what my friend Dr. Telmiz referred to. Arab nationalism, pan-Islamism, later developments like the establishment of fighter organizations such as Islamic Brotherhood, Al-Qaeda, Revolutionary Guards, Hezbollah, etc., were all manifestations and results of intergroup rivalry and the revival of the old empire-building syndrome under guise of various different pretexts. The justifications may be different, but the impulse is the same. The last ideological group to appear in the Middle East to terrorize it and terrorize the world later is the monstrous ISIS, which is neither Islamic nor a state like my friend from Yemen mentioned earlier. It is an insane extremist group attracting insane people from the world over and is turning into an international menace operating in all continents and raising hell and flood of blood in a surreal movie-like productions in which blood is very real. A good question about it is, who created the scenario and why? It's a question with no clear answer yet, but we are working on finding the different loose ends that may lead us to the creator. This is just a general reference. So what about the Gulf and Saudi Arabia, where I come from as one of the first 30 ladies in Majlis Shura, and thanks to, God bless his soul, King Abdullah bin Abdul Aziz. I call it our frames of membership: Arab, Muslim, and GCC. As this is a view of the majority, it allows me to speak in the pronoun we rather than I. As you know, KSA is a unique case of unifying in an age of fragmenting or fragmentization of bigger units. When KSA was created, every other big empire was falling apart. That in itself is something to applaud. We also have another achievement, which is jumping across centuries from a dormant desert system into the modern world and put on a podium where people question, why aren't you on par? Why aren't you with us? Well, great, you have spent centuries getting there. Allow us a few decades to finally make it and be strong enough to be on par or to compete. But we're doing fine. So our frames is Islamic. It's a society of people who happen to have the honor and the responsibility of serving the two holy mosques for millions of Muslims across the world, and their annual visitors who have grown from hundreds to millions. We're Arabs. We speak the language of the Holy Quran and take pride in our language and respect our treaties and utterances. In the Gulf, we are members of the GCC and respect its membership with hopes of becoming more of a union than just cooperation. We go to a larger frame, which is the regional. We look to peace, stability, prosperity for all through cooperation and mutual respect rather than subjugation or being imposed on by any other identity that they see fit. That's the first one. Then our ideologies. And I say ideologies intentionally because while our creed is Islam, our religious creed is Islam, and our values are social and puritanical, our political focus has changed from establishing the modern state to working on sustainable development. Our economic stance is to continue the growth internally and uphold stability worldwide. We go to our aspirations, basically the same as any normal state with legitimate aspirations for internal growth, membership of mutual respect in a modern world society, and I call it the 5 S's. Sovereignty of the state, stability for the society, security for the economy, safety for the people, and sanity in the neighborhood. Quote that as Thuraya, the 5 S's. Our strategy has always been a mix of, I can't read my own handwriting. Yes, I mean, we want to keep our world market share. That's legitimate. The other is you want also to to form alliances where you protect other people's stability. So it's not just playing, at your own risk, but also the others should share with you the risk that you take. Our strategy at present is the national transformation you have heard about, and I have been in the workshop just recently, last month. We want the national transformation program to take us from a state depending on one major source of income, which is oil, and society depending on the government to do everything for it like a good father, provide it with all the needs, to a more advanced structure where responsibility is shared by the private sector, the citizens, mostly the citizens with the higher income status. while we protect the lower income up to the middle income from what is coming with the economic pressures at present. Now, we come to something that everybody was talking about today, and it is the red lines. The red lines, these aspirations to maintain a safe neighborhood for all through mutual respect for individual states, internal sovereignty, cooperation in times of peace, and alliances under any attack, highlight our red lines. Summed up simply, respect your neighbor, no meddling in other states' affairs, no illegal interferences without being invited, no agitating, cooperation to protect regional and community safety and development includes joining forces against threat from any source, from invasion to terrorism, to crime, to social unrest, to establishment of illegal networks of any sort, both native and foreign. The Gulf countries, and here I speak about the Gulf countries, not just Saudi Arabia, have close to 20 million working expat nationals working in various roles. Saudi Arabia hosts 3 million from India alone. We host also millions of pilgrims coming to Hajj and Umrah every year. This makes it mandatory to ensure a state of law and order and enforce this state of law and order to protect everybody, the visitors and the citizens. I don't claim that it's a foolproof setup, but we are aspiring to make it so, with God's blessing. Our present view is it's a mutual relationship that makes stability a prerequisite for peace and growth, whether it's a relationship between the citizen and the government, or a relationship between a state and the neighbors, or a relationship between the consumer and the producer. It's got to be a win-win situation for everybody. I'll go back to our guru here, Ambassador Tilmiz. He talked about what King Abdullah, his views on what should be. And I'd speak personally about what I experienced living in the Gulf area and in Saudi Arabia from childhood to now. I was born and grew up in Bahrain, and I know that people did not have these sectarian problems. In fact, when we wanted to oust the British, we stood together, not me, I was just a child, but the thousands of people that took to the street were saying, Shia, Sunni are brothers. We don't want the British. And when the referendum came, they chose the ruling family that was there. This was a UN-run referendum. They knew who they were choosing. It wasn't Iran because it was an option, and they didn't pick it. Families were married across sects. My own family is mixed of both. In 3, if not more, Gulf countries. Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and I think even Oman. They don't have the sectarian feeling. It is a new thing ingested there to cause schism. But if you grew up in the last few years rather than experience what was there before, you wouldn't realize that. Fear is ingested. It is something that people learn over time. So cousins become scared of cousins, and they think of them as enemies rather than family because of the sectarian situation. I hope that we'll be able to overcome that and be as optimistic as Dr. Tilmiz pointed out. We go back to peace. The last 5 years saw the culmination of external interference in what we call, in the whole Arab region, in what we call the Arab Spring. You know the word, I'm a poet. The words always stop me to think of them. In English, and I am bilingual from childhood, the word spring doesn't just mean the season. Spring means jump, bounce. Was it supposed to be creating a situation where someone bounces on someone? Very possible, because that's what happened. When you think of the fire, that suddenly started happening from one country to another country, it's not just by, seeing a role model and copying it. Somebody somehow might have put an inflamed or inflammatory substance for it to happen. It's not in our history. Someone this morning referred to the Arabs being subservient or quiet or, not active. Maybe somebody thought that by doing this they will become active but produce the result that they want. Now this is not conspiracy theory or thinking. I'm old enough to have lived through different things, studied the history of the world, studied the history of India. I know about Hindus and Muslims standing saying Hindu Muslim bye bye when they wanted the British out, just like the Bahrainis did. I know all about that, and I realize that things don't happen without some kind of a helping hand, someone that ignites a match to start a fire. Hope that the wind, or you can even blow and have it run from one place to another. I would say I'm happy that we didn't catch fire in Saudi Arabia, because I would hate to see us burn. I'm very happy that we kept our stability. It may have been really strong. If your child has a temper tantrum, sometimes you have to show some force to stop it. You can't allow it to just go on. We have, thank God, done well for keeping our stability, and I hope to God that we will continue to bring stability to the rest. Now, igniting fires in all our neighborhood, Bahrain, Lebanon, Syria, jumping, Iraq before that, and finally in Yemen, I was actually shocked to hear about all the activities. I don't minimize what Iran has been doing. When you find military people inside Yemen, you wonder what took them to Yemen. They're not even border neighbors of Iran. Why are they there? Helping the Shiites? They didn't help the Shiites in Bahrain. They were happy before marrying each other without knowing what your sect was. Suddenly now we ask cousins, are you Shia or Sunni? Is that good? I don't think so. It's a very emotional speech for me, because I am in the middle of it. While everybody is talking about it, I'm the one who is there. When the fire gets hot, it burns me. When the water is put to put it down, it drowns me. Me, as a whole group of people who are there, who are neither, sectarian or wanted to be sectarian, but they are put in this situation where it's created all around you. I hope that we overcome with wisdom and strength any attempt to force us into that situation. Since before, the wisdom of King Abdulaziz was to try to create a citizenship feeling in everybody. In fact, it was, the Western region is different from the Eastern region culture-wise, even accent-wise. The South, the North, they are all unified into one country, and he managed to do it, and that was a miracle. Through the kings, we came to King Abdullah, who wanted to, as was said, listen to the complaints of the citizens and try to make up for it. In 2002, he met with a group of women. I was one of them. It was not for media, not to impress the West, not by direction from the West or the East or anybody. He just wanted to know what the ladies, the women felt and experienced, so that there is direct dialogue with him and some corrections, reforms. Isn't this what we're talking about? Reforms to make the citizen happy? He was doing that without, putting himself as a hero in front of the international media. I attest to that because I was one of the 14 ladies who met with him upon his request, and I was taken from the Eastern Province with 3 others to meet with other colleagues from the rest of the country just to talk to him, and he would give us attentive ears and hear what we have to say. That's for the ladies. I don't know. They did it also for the men. They did it also for the different sects. There is nothing that they are not aware of, and it's brewing inside the people because they want reform. Reform is a desire by all, the citizens and the government, and they are working to make it happen. In the last speech of the king to us, he put the important things. He said, our religion, we respect our tongue, meaning being Arab, the solidarity, the national unity, the peaceful coexistence with others, and we are here and our doors are not closed. You don't need to go and agitate and go all over the world as if the savior will come from outside. We are open to hear and work together. And he means it. Now that the national transformation program comes at a time when, of course, we are also hit by economic pressures, which makes it more of a priority to happen. We're working on it. I was in the workshop. I sat with the Minister of Justice. How far is it from ladies to the Minister of Justice? I said, I want to bring the situation of ladies in front of courts to you, because the clerics and the judges make it difficult for her and she suffers. And he listened, with people sitting and listening. Gave me the time to explain what is happening that I hear about as a member of the Shura and as a woman, because they can open up and tell me. You know what? 3 days later, he came up with an order saying there should be a study to look into the situation of women in courts. I didn't know this, but one of my cleric friends in the Shura came and said, you know what you did the other day had an effect. So there is communication and there is reform. 3 days later, he put another request or order. I don't know what the legal terms are for these things. He said, we want to look into the situation of women, divorcees, under the Islamic tradition. What are the laws, the legal laws of the Sharia? He can just divorce her or just leave her. He says, no, the real religion has to be applied. Now, if she is divorced, she needs to know. It's made clear. He is responsible for paying for his children and his divorced wife. Not only that, in answer to the question I put for him, said, how is she going to run after him, even if you pass a law that says, you give her? He should give her. He said, no, we give her from our fund, and we run after her. So it's going to be the government, as in the state, the Ministry of Justice, running after these people who don't do what the Sharia tells them to do with their wives. You know what? It makes me feel happy. I was always ready to be a critic and criticize, and it's so easy to be a and ignore what doesn't fit with your original conception of what's happening, whether it's the neighboring state or the state of the world, or find somebody to be blamed and blame them. But when you are in the middle of the situation, you know what it means. You feel it. I hope I gave you some of the situation to clarify what is happening in my country, in my region, and in the world. Thank you.